And listen, you guys know I'm a big fan of Dan Stevens too, and to see him play such a fun, weird, and morally bereft character is just always a treat for me. I mean, of course, I was already a fan of him in things like Downton Abbey. Matthew, my heart still breaks for you. But, like, you know, seeing him in movies like The Guest, you know, directed by Adam Wingard, which brought them together, was awesome. Just that's one of my favorite films of the previous decade. It's a great sci-fi action thriller. It has so much going for it, but the writing of the movie is so sharp and fun. Great cast, but Dan Stevens, he's the secret ingredient that made that movie so good. And it's really like, you know, yeah, he did some bigger films after that, like Beauty and the Beast and stuff. He made his money. But, like, The Guest kind of showed, I feel like, what he wants to do with so much of his career, which is just play weirdos. To play weirdos and psychopaths and really twisted characters. And that's on full display here. And my next review is for Abigail. Now, I have to admit, I was growing a little concerned about the horror films that we were getting early on in 2024. You know, it wasn't like last year, you know, when Megan started 2023 off with a bang and went on to be one of the most fun movies that I saw that year, although we also got some very good horror films as well. But it was like, wow, it started off the year in a really exciting, fun way. You know, for this particular year, we started the year off with awful films like Blumhouse's haunted killer pool movie, Night Swim. And then we got another Jeff Wadlow stinker with Imaginary. But thankfully, you know, we've gotten some really nice surprises in the horror genre with films like the Stone Age horror survival thriller Out of Darkness, which I still recommend people checking out. And most recently, like the shockingly good horror prequel, The First Omen. Did not expect that movie to be as good as it was, but it absolutely was. And of course, one of the best movies that I've had the pleasure of watching so far this year, and easily in my personal top 5 at the moment, Late Night with the Devil with David Dastmalchian in the leading role. Great. Did such a great job. Love that movie. Could not recommend it more. And apparently now it's on Shudder, so do yourself a favor, check it out. But one film that I was most looking forward to this year was Abigail, brought to us by, you know, Radio Silence, who are, you know, best known for the incredible horror thriller Ready or Not, which came out a couple years ago, which is one of my favorite films that year that it came out. But of course, the 5th and the 6th entries in the Scream franchise as well kind of brought the Scream franchise to prominence. Even though I have my issues with those movies, there's no doubt that it put it back in the pop culture zeitgeist. And yeah, and of course, there's also a ton of other horror films that we can look forward to later this year, stuff like Maxine and things. But in any case, you know, I was excited for something like Abigail, and I saw the trailers for Abigail, and I really liked them. You know, despite them possibly being a little too revealing. And I did find that frustrating. Matter of fact, I kind of spoiled myself on something, or something I thought I was going to spoil myself on. However, you know, I was very excited to see it, and I can proudly say that I have. You know, just earlier this morning, I was hanging out with the senior citizens as they were sucking on their Werther's Originals. But again, before jumping into the film and the review, let me provide you guys with a synopsis. A group of criminals are tasked to kidnap a 12-year-old girl of a powerful underworld figure and hold up in a mysterious and isolated mansion. But their plans soon unravel when they learn their young captive is anything but an innocent little girl. First off, I really just want to praise the ensemble of actors that Radio Silence have brought together for this film. Everyone's characters, from Melissa Barrera to Dan Stevens to Catherine Newton to Kevin Durant, and everyone else that's featured in this film has just a very specific look and personality that makes them stand out. You can tell these actors are having a lot of fun with this material. And they all get scenes where you not only learn more about them and their history and their backgrounds and their personalities, but they all have a scene or sequence of scenes that make them stand out and are really fun. Their personalities, whether they be kind, funny, troubled, twisted, completely messed up, are on full display, and they're memorable. So when bad things start to happen to many of them, and a lot of horrifically terrible things do, you actually feel something for them in those scenes. Now, outside of Abigail herself, who I'll get to in just a moment, some of the best and most interesting scenes, especially the ones, filled with tension and just, changing dynamics and power plays, are between Melissa Barrera and Dan Stevens. You have a lot of drama between them, even before we get to the vampire ballerina stuff. And it's very entertaining to watch. And listen, you guys know I'm a big fan of Dan Stevens too, and to see him play such a fun, weird, and morally bereft character is just always a treat for me. I mean, of course, I was already a fan of him in things like Downton Abbey. Matthew, my heart still breaks for you. But, seeing him in movies like The Guest, directed by Adam Wingard, which brought them together, was awesome. Just that's one of my favorite films of the previous decade. It's a great sci-fi action thriller. It has so much going for it, but the writing of the movie is so sharp and fun. Great cast, but Dan Stevens, he's the secret ingredient that made that movie so good. And it's really he did some bigger films after that, like Beauty and the Beast and stuff. He made his money. But, The Guest kind of showed, I feel like, what he wants to do with so much of his career, which is just play weirdos. To play weirdos and psychopaths and really twisted characters, and that's on full display here. And I guess the rest of the cast too, they use a bunch of aliases that are derived from, the Rat Pack, and the group itself, it consists of a former army medic, and now he's this recovering drug addict. You have this Dan Stevens character, who's a former detective. You have a hacker. You have a sociopathic person in it. A lot of people have different, backgrounds in combat and things, and people that are also in the mob. So just all these people together in one place, it's a powder keg. And that's before we even get to the vampire, the little killer ballerina vampire girl. But, the true star of the movie is Alicia Weir as Abigail, who I think this is my first time I've ever seen her. I'm not too familiar with her as an actress. I don't believe I've seen any of her other projects or films or TV shows she's been in. And she is absolutely fantastic in this role. Even before she's revealed to be a nasty, hungry little vampire girl, she's great when she's pretty much just fooling everyone, bamboozling everyone as this scared but seemingly sweet and kind little girl. But when that switch is flipped, she becomes a nasty son of a bitch that will fuck you up. And she plays that part of her performance. She plays it up with so much wonderful glee. I mean, she's laughing, she's dancing. I mean, everything. She's teasing them, mocking them. It's what can I say? I just love playing with my food. And it's wow, they did a great job with her. And, despite being a horror movie, there's still a lot of comedy to it. Maybe I wouldn't go so far as say it's a horror comedy, but there is definitely a lot of comedy in here. Some great bits of funny dialogue and some fun, goofy physical sequences too. Some stuff that is just very gory and graphic and bloody, but sometimes they kind of weave a little humor in there where it makes it a little more palatable, makes it easier going down, if you will. And the movie's aesthetic is also quite wonderful. We mostly spend time in one location. And again, it's this kind of old, opulent, very big mansion. But the mansion actually feels right out of Resident Evil. And there's listen to the other thing. No more excuses for bad Resident Evil movies. There are so many films that we can point to Ready or Not. But especially Abigail. You have this one huge location. The mansion itself is just filled to the brim with so much personality, from the production design and the furniture and just the lighting in this place, the different areas of it. Everything has a certain atmosphere and a sense of danger. That's what this place does. It's why copy this and put it into a Resident Evil movie, okay? And there you go. You've accomplished so much. I mean, you still need to have it be well written and directed, of course, but it's just do that. Instead of the cheap shit that we've gotten recently in other Resident Evil projects, or Welcome to Raccoon City. Watching this movie, I just kept thinking about Resident Evil. It's wow, these guys, the Radio Silence, do such a fantastic job with that property, especially since they are so good when it comes to making horror films in one a specific location. And I love the way this place looked. It added to the stakes. It added to the thrills. And so many of the fun sequences. There's some really gross parts of the mansion that it's like that'll make you retch. But all of it like really worked for me. Now listen, if I have a complaint, it honestly has to do with the marketing and what they reveal in the trailers. The whole vampire reveal does come later on in the movie because they spend so much time actually building up these characters, giving you like the sense of history, even though they don't know each other very well, but they soon do. And there's a lot of aspects of their personalities that rub each other the wrong way, and that creates like tension. And then we get to the vampire stuff afterwards. But the trailers led with that, which is disappointing. And so I just wish like you had these directors, they had more control over the marketing of their movies, or more control over at least how these trailers are edited. I know some do. I believe like Quentin Tarantino has actually like a lot of control over how his trailers are edited for all of his films. But in any case, I wish that was the case for this movie. Now, thankfully, there are a few more twists and turns in this film that are not revealed in the trailers, which I was grateful towards and that I liked and I thought really worked. And there's some really cool relationship changes too that I did not expect, and I thought that was pretty fun. And so I'm glad to say they did not reveal everything in those trailers. There's still some surprises there. But, other than that, my complaint about the marketing, which again is not the filmmaker's fault, this is a great bloody horror film, just oozing with atmosphere and features some really memorable performances from its ensemble cast. And that's the other thing too. Like usually I get very nervous about like big ensemble casts of like people, but because Radio Silence do such a great job defining everyone feels like special and not like no one's a lot of these people end up dying, of course, but you remember each of them and they stand out among each other, which is what makes it inherently interesting. So I like that, despite the relatively big ensemble cast. But what about you guys? Did you guys check out Abigail? Did you like it as much as I did? It's up there. It's one of my favorite films this year so far. It's a great vampire film. One of the better vampire films that I've seen in quite some time. I have to think about what was the last vampire film I really liked as much as this one. It's been a hot minute. It's been a while, but I thought it was very good. I'm excited to see what Radio Silence continues to do in the horror genre, or like maybe particularly other genres like science fiction, changing up a little bit. I think that'd be kind of cool. I think their sensibilities would do well for other genres. But so far, they're in terms of their original projects, I've liked their original stuff, I would say, more than their like Scream films. Although I actually like Scream 6 a lot. Had issues with 5. But in any case, I'm liking what they're doing. They're doing a lot right here. I hope they continue on with their relationships with a lot of these actors, especially people like Melissa Barrera, who they clearly like, people like Dan Stevens. I think it's great. But what about you guys? What do you think of Abigail?